This is not about English, this is about freedom. Because
Mm.
suddenly you are free from all of these expectations and binds that have kept women quiet, essentially. I would say most, I don't know, 80% of the women that I work with go on to be promoted.
You'll spend 80,000 hours at work. You're here because you want those hours to count. Hi, I'm Zoe Schofield.
And I'm Erica Sosner. A warm welcome to the Career Equation podcast. On this podcast, we take time out from our award-winning careers consultancy to share a game-changing formula to help you solve the sum of your life.
Each week, we and our guests use the career equation to explore their story so far and help them unlock the secrets of a fulfilling career.
Imagine how your leadership and communication style might be impacted by talking a language that isn't your own. What if the language you're speaking changes the way you think and feel, and even how you navigate conflict and challenge in the boardroom? What if presence is about so much more than what we say, but instead how we show up for ourselves? Today's guest, Sarah Jane Seatherton, spends her time helping women with English as a second language embody presence and power in their communication. Let's find out more. So welcome everyone to another edition of the Career Equation podcast. And this is one of our specials where we talk to an expert who's got particular insight and thought leadership that we think will be useful and valuable for your career. And today I'm really excited to be talking with Sarah Jane Seatherton. She is an expert on women using English as a second language and the kinds of impacts and challenges that that might have in terms of their leadership style and making the most of who they are and where their career can take them. I'm really interested in this because we have loads of clients that are international businesses with English as their primary language. And I'm very curious to see in what ways speaking in a language second to your innate language impacts the way in which you communicate your ideas. So I'm sure that lots of people are going to be interested in this. So a very warm welcome to you, Sarah.
Thanks for having me, Erica. It's really nice to be here.
So tell us a little bit about exactly what it is that you do.
So I call myself a power practitioner, right? Because I couldn't really find a name that suited me. And what that means is that I train women who speak English as a second language, as you said already, to be able to access and express power. And by that, I mean, how do they have influence and how do they have impact when they're dealing with international stakeholders in international environments? Most of the women I work with are at a certain level of their career that means they are quite often the only woman in the room. And so they're already dealing with barriers that are inherent in being a woman in those kind of spaces. And we add English as a second language to that, everything kind of intensifies. And so my work is really about how do they use what they have, you mentioned that before as well, to be able to really just express themselves fully, have influence, get the results that they want, stay on the topic until they get the results that they want, and just be able to be the best leader that they can.
Fantastic. And that sounds incredibly useful. The other day, I was in Senegal with a good friend of mine who's now the ambassador to Senegal. So she is a French native speaker, but has grown up within the English education system. And a conversation started between her and a number of other women around the table who are all involved in international development and all speak English as a second language. And they were all talking about the ways that their thinking changes when they use a different language. As a kind of fun example, my friend said, I'm more moany in French. I do more complaining. I'm more rigorous in a way when I'm speaking French. And her Dutch friend sitting next to her said something similar to that effect about, I'm a bit more no nonsense when I'm thinking with my Dutch head and when I'm speaking in Dutch. This was a fascinating conversation because I'd never really considered it before. But of course, with our interview coming up, I thought, wow, that is extremely interesting. And of course, this is something that anybody who speaks, does business or lives life in a second language may be impacted by, whatever their sex, whatever their background, whatever the language that they're speaking. So I wonder how you came across this as an important problem to solve, and then what you started to do to work that out.
So I was working for many, many years as an executive English teacher. And in my lessons that I was having with one-to-one lessons with high-performing, high-achieving women that were positioned in leading global businesses, and I was having these repeated conversations, I was seeing these repeated patterns in these women who, to my young eyes, were these really powerful, incredible women. But individually, they were all telling me, Sarah, I don't feel that my English is enough to deal with an interruption when I'm interrupted. Like, I don't know how to manage if somebody says like a joke that's unsavory. Like, I don't know how to manage that. I don't know how to deal with resistance or conflict or if I'm interrupted. But there were all of these different things that these women were telling me. And what they were attributing it to was that their English wasn't enough. And they were really sure that if their English was better, they would be able to manage all of those things. And I was there looking at this. Firstly, I would say to them, oh my God, that's so funny. You know, another one of my students says that. And I don't think they believed me. I think they thought I was being polite, because they all genuinely believed that it was their individual lack, their individual inadequacy. It was their problem that they couldn't manage these interactions because their English wasn't enough. It just didn't sit right for me at all. Like, I think it's important to say that all of these conversations were happening before the Me Too movement. And at that time, the conversation was really different around female voices. And we know now that women have been traditionally silenced. And we know now there's lots of research. I don't know if you're aware of The Authority Gap by Marianne Sykart. Have you read that book? It's wonderful. But she's very clear about the fact that women are constantly talked over, ignored, underestimated, interrupted, questioned, asked to justify their position. They're not believed in the same way that men are. Their competence is constantly being challenged. And there's all of these different problems that women are dealing with before we even add English as a second language, right? So I was there looking at all of this. I couldn't articulate any of it. I didn't really understand fully what was happening. It was just a sense that English wasn't the problem, because I was, at that time, I was like, right, okay, let's make your English perfect. Let's double down on English. And however good the English of these women became, it still wasn't enough for them to be able to move through the world in the way that they wanted to move through the world, right, as leaders. I was once I'd started my own business and I had my own platform, I was really free to start investigating, experimenting, exploring different options of ways to combat the issues these women were facing. I just understood that it was all this kind of under the surface stuff that was happening. It's the iceberg, right? Like at the top of the iceberg that you can see, it was, my English isn't enough. But then you come below the iceberg and you've got all of these different things happening, thought paradigms that don't support a woman's success, or kind of culture and conditioning that interfere with the way that an environment responds to us. There's lots of ideas that we've internalized and that we carry with us that influence legitimacy. Like, do we walk into a room with an automatic sense of I belong here or not? I'm an autodidact, Erica. I'm incredibly curious and I like to try and fix things, right? I had a lot of love for these women and I was seeing them struggle. They weren't able to have these conversations with anybody else, because women in those positions, they're not going to walk around and say to everybody, oh, you know, I feel insecure about my English, because they can't show that part of themselves. And this is, I mean, now maybe we do have these conversations more openly and leaders are more comfortable showing weakness or vulnerability. But then, there was no way they could display that. And I just wanted to find a way to fix it. But then one day, a woman came to me who's based in London, and she was about to become a partner in her law firm. And she came to me, she'd seen a video that I'd posted on LinkedIn. And she said to me, I need you. I can't fully articulate why, but I know that I need you. It's not about my English, right? English wasn't her problem. Her English was probably better than mine because of educational differences. And she wasn't nervous speaking in public. She's spoken to 600 people and she stood up in front of the European court. It wasn't about that. It was more about like the insidious stuff that women deal with, like microaggressions and how do you not shut down when somebody's trying to shut you down? How do you keep going even though you sense that this person is trying to silence you? Or how do you ensure that your conditioning doesn't stop you from saying what you are thinking because you are worried about offending the person that you're talking to? All of these kind of things that are like in the murkier waters, no? And she came to me, and all of this stuff I'd been doing this in my English lessons anyway, covertly, but she was the first person that said, I don't know what it is exactly, but I know that I need some of this other stuff that neither of us could fully articulate at that time. And I said to her, listen, you're a year too early, like, because I'm not quite ready for you. But if you are willing to go on this journey with me and we'll go on this together, I will write something for you. And she said, yes. The level of trust that she gave me, I had to level up to be able to hold her and give her what she needed. And because of who she was, her position and who she was in the world, and the fact that she trusted me, it was just, yeah, it was incredible. And then out of that, fast forward to where we are now, and I've got these 3 programs that are power programs, like three separate programs that deal with power. And how do you, as a woman, access your personal power, move through the world from that place? Once you've done that foundational work, how do you then manage resistance, say no, set boundaries, ask for what you want, be able to be congruent so that it's executive presence, they call it, no? Before you even open your mouth, people just know that you belong there and that you have something to say and something to bring to the table. So in the Harvard Business Review, I heard it called inner consistency, which is this idea that every single element of you as a human, so it's just like mind, body, emotions, all of those things are aligned and invested in where you're going, and you're just a very congruent communicator. So that's what I started to teach people.
It would be really interesting to know then, to what extent does language even play a part in this, or second language play a part in this? Has there remained a correlation between some of these challenges that your clients described and the fact that English is their second language? Or has that dimmed somewhat, and actually you're finding that executive presence in any language is relevant for supporting women to really stand out in their leadership?
Yeah. This was the surprise for me, I think. Like, what started to happen with clients is that suddenly their blocks and their barriers that they had with their English just started to disappear. You're dealing with women who have been working in English for most of their professional career. They're women that have studied English for years and they've been working in the language for years, and so they have knowledge and information. It's all in there, but they just, when they're in a high stakes interaction, they're not able to access it. I think 2 things happen actually for them. One, it's this blockages and barriers just start to disappear, and so you can access a fluency that I didn't even know that I had. But then also perfectionism, especially in women of that kind of profile, they're high performing, high achieving, they're very demanding of themselves, right? And so they give themselves an extraordinarily hard time with all things, and then that they add that to their English as well. So if you can take that component out and teach these women, show these women how to have a self-acceptance, a self-love, self-support, they then are more forgiving with themselves. That's another thing that people say, that I forgive myself, which is just, I mean, that's a joy to be able to give to people. Obviously, it's a pleasure to give people that. And they just are able to focus on what's important and not on stupid things like prepositions, right? Like, it doesn't really matter if you're saying in the morning or on the morning. Who cares when you're trying to implement policy that will do with this, like dealing with more sustainable options in the company? There's deeper stuff at play, isn't there, for women? The way that we have been conditioned, our attention tends to go on ridiculous things so that we're not in the arena, I believe. I mean, like, it feels to me like a big ruse, like that when we've got women going, oh my God, I've got wrinkles, or oh my God, I'm not thin enough, or whatever it may be. Like, who cares? We've got a world to change and move and shift so we can have something beautiful for future generations.
Managers and leaders notice the huge range of pressures Sarah Jane voices for women at a senior level, the environment, the history, and the otherness that holds them back. When we work on women's leadership style and executive presence, how do we voice and recognize the inherited challenges of culture and history, and the relatively recent arrival of senior women in the boardroom? How can we work with blocks and barriers that may not even have been visible or consciously voiced and noticed?
When I start having those deeper conversations with women and reframing completely what their English is for, and it is not a measure or a marker of intelligence, or it's simply a tool. And once you start training where your attention goes, they then can just start to become like ninjas and focus on what's important. They just lead from a very different place, I think.
People will be listening in and going, hey, I struggle with that. I suffer with that. That's difficult for me. It's hard for me to know
what to prioritize when I'm in a dialogue. So can you give us a couple of real practical techniques and examples of where you've overcome something you see fairly typically happening in terms of disempowerment for women, and then what your implementation is that supports them, that listeners could then start to play with just a little bit and to get a bit more of a flavor?
The first thing is awareness, right? So one of the things that we talk about that I'm sure women that I work with are aware of is that we have been traditionally rewarded for how we are, right? Whereas men have been rewarded traditionally for what they do. A result of that is that our attention tends to go in on ourselves. And there's this constant inner dialogue that is asking us whether or not we are fulfilling the standards that have been imposed. So we all have a very, very loud inner critic. It's constantly self-policing, self-monitoring, and we can't ever stop that. And we don't want to either, because actually it can be useful, right, in helping us make decisions. But when we're in a high stakes interaction, having your attention on that voice and on the interaction and on the things that you need to try and say, it's just chaos. So I make women aware of that. Firstly, be aware of where your attention is going, right? And so if you are putting your attention onto this inner voice that is telling you, that's criticizing you, how do we start to recognize that's happening and then start making decisions about, okay, no, I'm going to not put my attention on that. I'm going to put my attention onto the room, the interaction, the result that I want. Now, to train for that, I use an exercise called centering, which is where you use your body as a way to train where your attention goes. It's like feeling your feet on the floor and just doing a body scan, right? And just noticing that you can notice what else is happening in your body, not just your thoughts. So that then what starts to happen is that it's going to the gym and doing reps so that you're practicing, training, making stronger your ability to manage where your attention goes. And we just use our body because it's safe. It's a safe place to do that. So that day when this woman came to me to ask me, she said, I need you, but I can't articulate why. My inner critic was so loud. It was almost painful, though, because I come from a very working class background. And so I was there with this woman who is this highly educated, working in law, like making legislation. Just, I was so overwhelmed. That inner critic, it was so loud, like, you have nothing to give this woman. Like, it was such a moment for me of, this training really works, because I was just like, okay, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm just going to focus on what she's saying to me. She's here to tell me something. She's trying to tell me something. I'm not going to put my attention on this voice.
That completely makes sense to me. I wonder whether discovering how to overcome it translates into whatever language and whatever situation they find themselves in. Is it a kind of universal fix?
One woman said to me, this was the one that I found extraordinarily beautiful. She said, this is not about English. This is about freedom. Because suddenly you are free from all of these expectations and binds that have kept women quiet, essentially. I would say most, I don't know, 80% of the women that I work with go on to be promoted. That's just because suddenly, what did one say recently? She said something about like fear. So fear and limitations just become a thing of the past. Don't want to live in that anymore. And obviously, of course, you've got no fear then in English, but then you've got no fear in where you're going, right?
That's a pretty powerful statement if it is the case that you're able to take fear away for people. How does that translate then into things like being interrupted or kind of holding the room?
So it goes back to attention. So once you get to the point where you can master your own attention, you can then master the attention of other people. There's two things. So one is women often, we apologize, don't we? Oh, I'm sorry, can I just, and all of those kind of social, theatrical niceties that we're expected to do, we eliminate all of those, right? We don't do that. So we just stay with the main point of what we're there to do, right? And we're not rude. It's not about being aggressive, or it's not even really, I don't even think of it as being assertive, to be honest. I think it's just taking out all of the unnecessary things that we've been trained to do that don't actually serve a purpose. So all of that goes, and then it's attention. right? So it's just attention. And when you're in absolute control of where yours is, you can start to be in control of other people where their attention goes. So if somebody interrupts you, you just automatically and very quickly just go, I haven't finished, and carry on. And you're just owning the space.
Hey there. If you're feeling stuck, burnt out, or itching to try something new, but you don't know where to start, we've got you. At The Career Equation, we help mid-career professionals get clear on what they want, what they offer, and where they thrive. You can book a free discovery call with me or Erica to explore how our one-to-one coaching could help you get moving in the right direction. Just head to thecareerequation.com and click book a call. And if you're a HR leader, HR partner, or learning specialist looking to bring meaningful career conversations into your organizations, we'd love to chat. Whether it's grads, high potentials, returners, or your senior team, we'll show you how the Career Equation helps people take ownership of their growth. It's free, easy, and might just change how you think about careers forever.
You used this word when we were prepping.
Entelechy.
Entelechy.
Yeah.
What's
Entelechy,
that
yeah.
mean? I'm intrigued.
It comes from Greek philosophy, right? I think it was Aristotle. It's a state where something's potential is fully realized or actualized, right? So the entelechy of a acorn, it would become an oak tree, right? So I just started thinking about applying that. How do you apply that to a person? And go, right, if we could activate that principle in ourselves and we give ourselves the conditions to become the thing that we are meant to be, what would that look like? What would that feel like? How would we do that? Like, we all have an innate wisdom. We all have there is a deeper truth and a deeper wisdom to all of us, but there's so much noise on the top of it that we're very disconnected from it, right? And if we can get below that noise and we can start connecting to that deeper wisdom and that deeper truth and start allowing it to lead us and guide us, beautiful things are possible, right? And that's not just as an individual, but that's in how we move through the world as leaders and how we would influence our work spaces and beyond. I use techniques that kind of activate and play a little bit with that principle.
That's very interesting. As you started to describe it, I realized that I'd heard it recently, and where I'd heard it was in the work of Maria Montessori, a phenomenal thinker within the educational space. And what she said was, a child can be raised into an adult without the presence of other adults, parents, teachers. That process happens anyway. But a child cannot become an adult without being a child. And she, like you, said, everything has within it the innate potentiality to become its flourished version, whether it is an oak tree or a grown-up or a butterfly. It already knows how to do that. And the job, therefore, of the educator or the parent is to create an environment that is conducive to supporting that knowledge to be able to roll out of the existence of that creature. And I thought this was a really, really interesting way to think about almost getting out of the way as a facilitator, as an educator, as a parent, or as a leader. What is conducive within this environment? And particularly interesting for me, because in the equation, of course, we say environment makes the biggest difference. You've got to have as little friction points between the environment that supports this person to actualize and to thrive and the environment that they've got. The more friction you've got, the less that they can succeed with that potential. And of course, when you're talking about women within the workplace itself is heavy with friction because it wasn't even designed for a woman's way of leading, being physically interacting with the world and all sorts of other things. And what would your advice be then to organizations as well who want to support this work, to be mindful of the ways in which all the sort of dogma that women are carrying around might be dragging along behind them as kind of ballast in their leadership capability within the organization? What would be your tips and tools for the environmentals that can be controlled?
So I think there needs to be just more emphasis on awareness raising so that people, organizations understand what it is that women deal with, but then also what that means for the men in the organization too, right? Because it works both ways, no? So if you've got women that are being talked over, constantly ignored, underestimated, all of that kind of thing happening just as a normal unconscious behavior, that results in there being a lot of pressure on men, right, to be the ones that are talking, providing the answers, leading the conversation, guiding the conversation, which comes with its a whole other set of issues. I think it's more to do with accepting that the world, as you alluded to before, was built by men for men. And so how do we start to make space for different ways of operating that's more inclusive for everybody and make space for everybody? And I think it just starts with awareness and education. I think it just starts with going, okay, listen, I can't fix what I can't see. One of the things that doesn't happen enough is that there isn't a contextualization around training. And so we have to be able to recognize we're standing in the shadows of a long history that has dictated to a fair degree how we move through the world. And we're trying to fix things at the moment. No, we are people. There is a genuine drive to make spaces more equitable. I feel really sure about that. But because a lot of a lot of people's behavior is unconscious, and I think just by awareness raising, education that shows this is what's happening and this is why it's happening, and then steps after that to fix it can be taken.
Give us some examples, if you can, of projects you're particularly pleased with, because we've had a lot of great examples of working one-to-one. It'd be interesting to hear how this translates into the power programs and the group work.
3 programs. One of them is called the Power Tools, which is 5 masterclasses that are deep dives into the most complicated things that women have to deal with when it comes to communication. And I was invited by Orange into their offices down in Madrid to deliver this program to 12 of their directors. And one of the biggest outcomes that I'm told when I do group work is that connectivity that women feel afterwards, right? Suddenly feel like, oh yes, I am not the only one that's dealing with these issues. So it's about being able to bring women together, solidarity, so that they don't feel alone. That's one of the insidious parts of the patriarchy. You know, women feel very isolated. People feel very isolated, but we're talking here about women, and actually going, no, we're in this together, and we can shift a culture. Like, we can have an influence over a culture, which I think is really nice too. So that bringing people together, I think, is a wonderful component of it. And then just confidence, right? Like a collective confidence that happens, because you start having, when you're doing group work, you're giving everybody permission to be bigger, right? To be better, to step up, to take up space, to be visible. Women are scared of being visible, right? Because we are so often just shot down. Like women don't want to be visible because you open yourselves up to horrible things. Like, we know that. And so when we can kind of do that collectively as a group, you stand strong, you stand together. There's a lot of internalized misogyny in women, right? So a lot of women will go after another woman who is being too much or whatever. And if you can actually bring a group of leaders into the same space and get them supporting each other, and then that sort of trickles down throughout their organization. So the other thing that has happened in sessions that I've done in groups, I don't shy away from my emotions, and I get them to not shy away from theirs. And so there's again, it's about like permission, but we do all need permission to a degree, like women especially. We have to give it to ourselves to be able to show vulnerability, to show insecurity, or whatever it may be. And that, having the freedom to be able to do that and know that your colleagues are going to hold you and support you in that, is really wonderful thing to be able to give to these women.
Women leaders, what simple tools and tips from today can you hone in on and try to start using in your own day-to-day life? There is systemic change to be made and conditioning to overcome, but how do we help ourselves to attend and show up 100%? Using noticing, attention, breath, overcoming the inner critic, and centering. I really notice how important the experience of being connected meaningfully with other women gives us the chance to support, champion, and share experiences, and is really a huge gift. How could you access more support?
Your own background, I sometimes think we teach best what we most need to learn. I feel like I am a careers expert and consultant because I found it so difficult to give myself permission to truly understand who I was and where I might do my best work, and to be allowed to do that and design that. So I mean no disrespect when I say that, but I'm curious about to what extent this work might have been healing and transformative to you also, and about kind of key moments within your career where you've surprised yourself by being able to tap into some of the wisdom that you're now sharing with other women.
As I said before, I come from a very working class background. I did not feel comfortable in my voice. I felt like I had nothing of any real value to offer. That's internalized ideas. I remember coming across the work of this woman, Dr. Claire Zammit, and she talks about the expectation gap. And she talks about the fact that women who are from the same social and economic background as men will have a 50% less expectations of themselves. That's like deep in our psyche of what we think is possible for us, what we think we can do, what we think we can achieve, how much love we think we can have, how much visibility, whatever it is, how much wealth, all of these things. And if we're not aware of that, we will self-sabotage and we will stand in our own way and stop ourselves from going for the next job or saying what we wanted to say in a meeting or whatever, right? I was an English teacher for such a long time, and the reason is because I was good at it, but it was also because I felt like that was my lane. There seemed to be this like really loud but silent voice, know your place, young lady, and English teaching is your place. And when you start to realize like, oh, hang on a minute, none of this is real. Why can I not? Now, my God, I'm ready to have a global business. Like, I'm ready for this to have a global reach. I'm ready for this to be enormous, and I'm going to be successful all around the world. Like, if you'd have said that to me before you and I met, I would have been like, oh, I'm just going to be an English teacher for the rest of my life. I think a huge part of it comes from the fact that I've always been very rebellious. And that was a nightmare when I was young, but I've learned to leverage it. I've always had a really strong sense of social injustice. None of this is fair. Why would that person have those opportunities and this person doesn't, right? Why would, in a meeting, we listen to the white native male speaker and not the woman with the Spanish accent from Cordoba or whatever? And so when you start to see, oh my God, actually, if I can do some inner work and start to challenge these structures, I can actually then have an influence over what happens, not just in my life, but in the lives of others. And then, I'm very intentional about the women that I work with, right? Like, I really try to go for women that are well positioned to be able to make change, because I believe that if I can give those women the right tools, they can change the world, man.
Go get them. Yeah. You very kindly attribute a certain percentage of the turning point that you made to me, which I always think is very generous because we never officially worked together in any way. But I'd love to hear what it was for you that was sort of transformatory about sort of starting to really leverage who you are and what you could bring in the world that touched you through my work or our conversations.
Erica, that was all you. That was your book. I'd moved to Belgrade at the age of 40 with no contacts. I didn't know anybody. I'd moved there. I had literally with a cello on my back. I went to go and study cello and arrived and was like, oh my God, right, I know nobody here. What have I done? And there was no work and I didn't have any contacts. And it was just like, what on earth have I done? And I came back to England for Christmas. And that was when I came to your house, which is thanks to Nikki.
Shared friend.
We literally had a 15-minute conversation. And something in that conversation clearly made you go, oh, Sarah, I think you need my book. And you gave me your book. Your book had just been published, Your Life Plan. And I went back to Belgrade with nothing else to do there other than play a bit of cello, try and find a job and go through this book. And within 3 months, I'd set up a business.
Wow.
And I think it's, yeah, but really, wow, Erica, like, wow, because it just, what that book gave me, was just that thing of belief. I studied literature at university, right? So I'd always been fascinated anyway by stories and narratives, always. And because it was centered around the hero story, I really identified with that. I was like, oh yeah, this can just be my story. This can be my journey. This is great. And that really resonated with me. And so it spoke to me on a very sort of personal level. But then there was all of this really practical advice in there, strategy, like how do you actually do that? So yeah, there's deeper work that has to happen. Of course there is, right? There's deeper work. Where I've come from to get to where I am and to where I'm going, deeper work happens regularly, no? But as outside of that, there needs to be like a practical step-by-step guide of, okay, this is what you do, natural planning, this is what you do to be able to start a business. I mean, I went into it like with zero knowledge, zero experience, nothing. And now I'm like, last year I gave a presentation to 100 women in PepsiCo. I've been working with Orange, I've been working with Toa, I've been working with Dassault Systems, working with Infled. And it's incredible. And I feel this is what I impart to people that I work with. Look, listen, if I can do, if I can get to where I am, anything is possible. Like we can absolutely break free from conditioned thought patterns that don't serve us. We can absolutely tap into power, personal power, leverage it, use it, create the world that we want within our sphere of influence. And I've done it. And so I can give that to other people and want to as much as possible.
And if we were going to ask you from that place of power and learning to speak back to your little self early on in life, with all of the tricky stuff that she was handling and managing and all the ways that she was limited, what advice and support would you give her now? What message would you give her from this position?
I lost my mum and my aunt last year.
Yeah,
so
sorry.
that was, yeah, that's sort of playing into this level of emotion. They would be so proud. I would say, Sarah Jane, you're going to be incredible, and just keep yourself focused. Keep believing in what's possible for you. I think just know that the universe has a plan for you that's bigger than what you're experiencing now. Because I do feel like that, Erica, as well. I feel like this work was not a strategic, create these incredible programs that are going to change women's lives. It wasn't like that. This has come from such a deep place, no? And it's come from a place that's way below any kind of ideas that I've had in my mind. I do feel it's very much out of my hands to a degree. Like it's very much come from something bigger than me. And so I think I'd say that to myself, just don't worry about anything. The universe has a plan. So while you're waiting for things to happen, have a good time, and be kind to yourself, love yourself.
It's been a fascinating conversation, and really, what really strikes me is actually the rigor with which you've pursued your line of thinking and your curiosity. And many of us, when someone asks us for something beyond what it is that's within our lane, would go, that's not my bag. It's interesting, but not my bag, and have done nothing further with it. I think what's so wonderful is that you've spotted a problem, spotted a pattern, spotted a need, and then used your natural ability to harness your curiosity and your learning and your ability to find and systematize what really works. And something beautiful is really coming from that. And I think it's really clear from listening to you how exciting and energizing that is, how transformative that is for your clients. But it also tells us a lot about your level of care and curiosity and rebellion. You were not just going to let that lie. So I think that any organizations and individuals that have the good fortune to work with you will really benefit from the depth of that rigor and that passion and enthusiasm and joy that you bring into your work. So thank you so much for sharing all of that insight today. It's been really, really cool. For people who are listening and going, I want a piece of that, I need to speak to this lady. Business is transforming communication. Sarah Jane Seatherton, transforming communication. What's the best way to get into dialogue with you?
I can be found on LinkedIn, so Sarah Jane Seatherton. I also have a LinkedIn company page that I don't use very often, but but it is there, which is Sarah Jane Transforming Communication. You can have a look at my website, which is sarahjane.life. I also have a podcast, actually, which is called The Power Talks, and that is about amplifying the voices of female leaders who speak English as their second language. And so I interview women who speak English as their second language, and we look at the blocks and barriers that these women face and how do we break through those. So that's a really nice entry point as well, I think, to who I am and what I'm trying to do in the world.
Thank you once again for joining us today.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Career Equation podcast.
Stay connected with us on socials for more career insights, behind-the-scenes moments, and updates on upcoming episodes. And if you'd like to work with us, visit the Career Equation website or click the links in the show notes.
Remember, the Career Equation isn't just a podcast, it's a journey towards unlocking your full potential, enjoying your life, and doing remarkable stuff. And don't forget to share your thoughts and feedback with us. Your input shapes the future of our show.
Until next time, keep solving those career equations and pursuing your path to success. This is Erica Sosa
And Zoe Schofield. Signing off.